can't you can't see who's asking questions. So we are actually live now on Be Kind, No Excuses. My name's Ree Pearson and I'm in not so sunny Whitley Bay in the northeast of England. And I'd like to give a massive welcome to Mary Wride, who is joining us from France. So
Yep.
I don't like you already because I'm jealous a little bit because I've seen what it looks like outside your window. But no, welcome to Be Kind, No Excuses, Mary. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. If
Thanks for
anybody's,
inviting me.
oh, absolutely my pleasure. I mean, I can't even remember how I came across your book. I can't remember. So for anybody who's watching either live, hello if you're live, and if you're not live, please put a comment and say that you've watched so we know that you have watched. If you are watching live, please say hello in the comments and I'll check on my phone because I'm not really sure that I've sussed out StreamYard yet. I'll be checking my phone if anybody's got any questions. But I have to tell everybody who is watching, I've actually read Mary's book. It's called The Song of Truth. And Mary's going to tell us a little bit about it. But when I read it, I was absolutely blown away. I've read a lot. I'm an absolute fanatical absorber. Do you know what I mean? I will literally if I can suck a book in through my pores, I will. And I have several books on the go all of the time, have done since I was a child. And your book is absolutely unique. There are many books about abusive relationships and abusive families, but nobody's written one the way you've written one.
Yeah.
And I read it in the summer. I really can't remember how we came to be connected. Can you?
Well, we were on the Buddy Bag Foundation meeting and you were chairing one of the focus type groups. So you and I were a bit like this, actually. You were on one end of the technology and I was on the other end, and there we were just having a chat. And at the time, you were just talking about the launch of your book, which is great, by the way. And I was talking about the one that I'd launched last year. And for anybody listening, you said you read it, but it is a tiny book. I mean, we're only talking 50 pages, but it packs a big punch, I think, in those 50 pages.
It's completely unique. It's beautifully written. And I sat out in my garden in the summer, in the sun, reading it.
Yeah.
And I went through so many emotions in those 50 pages.
Yeah.
It was absolutely incredible. So please tell everybody who's watching, tell them a little bit about your book. Well, tell them a lot about your book, but tell them about it and tell them, tell us how you came to make the decision to write.
Yeah. So it's The Song of Truth is a very, very personal journey. And it was one really that I guess started at the beginning of lockdown, March 2020, and we were all being thrown into lockdown situations. And I was watching the news here in France and picking up the BBC News and Sky News and various things. And what I became very aware of was this terminology, the shadow pandemic. And the shadow pandemic was actually where women and children were really locked up at home with predators, if you like, not very nice people, not very nice partners. And there was a 40% rise to hotlines, and it just triggered a lot of stuff for me, and created a lot of emotions. And I started to think a lot about my mum, and realized that, remembered that, she had a really, really tough time with my dad. And in fact, he destroyed a very beautiful and vital, vibrant woman. And I suppose because it was lockdown, it was very reflective period. I sort of thought, it was a lesson to me that I was holding on to a lot of sadness, a lot of anger, and a lot of fear. And I guess up to that point, because I've been busy working all my life and bringing up a daughter and all the things I've been doing, in some ways I've been avoiding the truth of the situation. And I decided I would just sit with it, and I would sort of let it come, whatever it was that I was emerging, rather than hide from it. It was probably the right time in my life to sort of reflect on it and deal with it. And in some ways, you know, I guess if people are listening out there, when you look back on a difficult part of your life, or when you think about looking back on it, the idea of hiding from it feels like, I don't want to open that box, because in fact it'll overwhelm me and I won't be able to cope. But I thought, no, Mary, you know, what is it? What is it that you want to say? And I also felt at the time, because so much was happening to other women and children behind closed doors, I thought, you know, you're a grown woman. You've got a responsibility to yourself to tell the truth. You've got a responsibility to your daughter to talk about this to her, so that it's a bit of a cautionary tale. She knew a bit about it, but she didn't really understand it properly. And really to other women, that, you know, I have a voice and I should use that voice to try and say something in the world that might help somebody. And that's really what led me to write the book, The Song of Truth.
Yes, and it is absolutely an exquisite piece of work, and so powerful. Would you share one of the poems? Because I know we're saying it's a book and it's your story, but the way you've written it is utterly beautiful. So could you share one of the poems?
Yeah, so the book, this is the book is The Song of Truth. Here it is. It's only a very small volume, so if anybody would like to read it, I really start off with you know, what is it, what did I sense was going on for me when I heard about the shadow pandemic. So the very introductory statement in the paragraph in the book, I'll read that first and then I'll just say something about the first poem. But it was, in the silence they are screaming to be found. I can hear them rattling their chains behind locked doors. And if I listen carefully, somewhere deep inside my soul, I am being offered a key. I take it. I sink into the shadows looking for the missing parts of me. But when I finally emerge, I have blood on my hands. And then I go into a sort of fairy tale, but not a fairy tale. It's not, but I go into a bit of a story of how I went on this journey to discover the hidden parts of myself. And, you know, one of those hidden parts was the young Mary who was incredibly frightened about what was going to happen to her mother. And for everybody listening, you know, we do rightly focus on the victim, the woman, could be a man, of course, but mainly women. And we focus on them, but we forget a lot about the impact that it has on children, or we overlook the impact it has on children. Yeah. So when I do finally meet the young Mary, I have a poem that she writes. So, and I turned to poetry because when I was in the house with my mum and there was all the violence sort of going on, I used to write poetry. And therefore, there was something about turning to poetry that felt that I could say what the young Mary wanted to say. So the first poem in the book is called Dungeon. The nights are long, they never end. There's only foe, there is no friend. We are not safe and must endure a curse for which there is no cure. Terror hangs in every room. In silence I can feel the gloom. A noise, a panic in my heart. A drama is about to start. For evil roams this house for sure. It prowls round every creaking door. Sometimes it crashes, screams and scares. Sometimes it tiptoes up the stairs. I lie in dread throughout the night. I clench my body up real tight. I curl myself into a ball. I make myself so very small. I tell you now, it's not a lie. I thought that we were going to die. In our home and in our beds, oh, how that messes with our heads. A monster lives, it snarls and gloats, it puts its claws up to our throats. Our voices strangled, held within, it's clear that we belong to him. And, you know, I cried a few tears when I wrote that. I mean, I cried a few tears when I wrote all the poems, but that took me right back to what it was like to be a young girl and to be fearful. And I suppose it's taken me over 50 years to admit just how scared, you know, I really was in that house at that time. And actually that fear has stayed with me, pretty much locked away inside of me for, you know, for my life.
Yes.
And just like PTSD and fear will stay with women that have lived with or are living with, you know, perpetrators, predators, we can't underestimate the effect of living with violence and coercive control and threats. What a huge effect that has on your mind and your body.
Yes. And that poem, I'm going to cry actually, because that poem, you absolutely capture little Mary, don't you?
Yeah.
And I look at children's books. I love children's books, and a lot of children's books are written in rhyme.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this, for me, there's a kind of twisted art in the fact that you've written it as a child, because it's very rhythmic, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you've written it as a child,
Yeah.
and that could be like a macabre child's book.
Yeah. But I
And
think,
that's
you know,
what really,
a child reading that would, you know, a child over the age of 10 reading that would relate to that, I think.
absolutely,
You know,
absolutely, that's what I mean.
particularly
That,
in that situation.
yeah, absolutely. And that's sort of, I think that's why it really struck me, because it's like, this is little Mary, and this is actually Big Mary
Yeah.
writing literally what's going through little Mary's mind. And
Yeah.
it's just so exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when she curls into a ball, I was,
Yeah.
God, I was absolutely no good.
Yeah. Yeah.
No good.
Yeah.
And this
If
is
I'd have tried to write it from, if I'd have tried to write it sort of prose, longhand, my sort of adult mind would have been trying to say, is this sentence correct? Da 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 da.
yeah.
There's something about poetry that allowed me to just go straight into my feelings. And it was my feelings could come out with the poem, and I wasn't running it through my mind. It just felt like it was coming from a different place. So,
Yes.
you know, that was important. And
Yes.
hopefully, you know, the book does help to make the child's voice a bit more visible in all of this, you know, all of the drama that goes on.
I think the book is a perfect healing tool for people. But also there'll be so many people out there going, this was me. This is me as a child.
Yeah.
This is my situation.
Yeah.
And that's really terrifying, because the more people we talk to, the more we realize that the abusers are almost carbon copies of each other.
For sure. And you say that in your book, you know, I mean, that is that of all the stories you tell in your book, you know, the theme is there, isn't it? It runs
Totally.
through it runs through all of it.
And
I haven't, you know, yeah.
it seems to me that there's a hole in the universe, and people will be watching this and go, this is what Ree says. There's a hole in the universe, and that hole is there, and it pops out abusers. Like, they're all the same. They're just different colors, like jelly babies, you know? They just like pop out. And we have to try and close that hole by bringing that education to people, by talking about it, by removing the shame.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think when you're in that situation, the shame burns through you, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and my mum this was happening in the sort of 70s, and she had no money and no job, and she was the typical housewife of that time. But also, you know, there was this thing about the neighbours and the this and the that, and you know, everybody was like, she was, you know, in that place that, you know, what would the neighbours think? And to be honest, to hell with the neighbours. You know, I mean, the neighbours could hear it anyway, so I don't know what the neighbours were thinking. You know, we lived in a semi-detached house, so you know, the neighbours would be wondering what was going on. So I think there is the shame. And you know, one thing I would say to women is that, you know, it's not your fault. And the moment you admit it to yourself and tell the truth to yourself that you are in a bad situation, and that, you know, you want to sort this situation, the first step really of sorting it is speak to someone. You know, speak to your best friend, speak to a colleague at work, maybe an HR manager, reach out to one of the support groups. But if you make that first step, which is to go beyond yourself, because that shame keeps you very much locked into yourself, and while you're locked into yourself, you're locked into with the perpetrator, because there's no way out really, and only you. And I say this in my book, there is no knight in shining armor. There's nobody coming to rescue you. At the end of the day, you're going to have to rescue yourself, you know, and that's the only solution. And you have to want it enough and realize that you've got one life, and you and your kids deserve a better life, you know, a sort of a proper whole life. And you do not want to be living just a part shadow life under the control of some nutcase. So, you know, it is important.
It is. And it's something that you've just said there is like there is no knight in shining armor. And that's something that I think we need to be aware of, that somebody who comes to you as the knight in shining armor may not actually be that person. Because when you're vulnerable, when you're in a relationship or you've just ended a relationship and you are vulnerable, an abuser can focus in on that vulnerability, because they are experts at that. And that's why, because there are women in this group, and there are men in this group who have gone from abusive relationship to abusive relationship to abusive relationship, and they think, well, who am I? Why am I making these mistakes? Why am I making these terrible choices? And they stop trusting themselves. And in actual fact, because your vulnerability is there, it acts like a kind of homing device for a perpetrator to come and attach to you and your vulnerability. And that's what they do. So you have to be aware that, the knight in shining armor might actually just be a nightmare. And that's, you know, so being aware of your vulnerability.
For sure. And I mean, that's so true about, you know, the perpetrators are, you know, they love an empath. They love somebody that is a bit needy at that particular moment in time, because they can just move in and put the arm around, and it all feels like, oh, I'm being kept safe. But you know, here's the other thing I think that most women said in your book, but you know, most women will say, if they are honest and tell the truth, is that there is always a red flag early in the relationship. And there'll be one red flag and two red flags and three red flags. And, you know, we have to get better at trusting our intuition. We have to, you know, our intuition as women is very, very trustworthy. And when we feel something in our bones and we feel something in our gut, you know, instead of rationalizing it and sort of trying to paper it away or paper over the cracks, you know, if you really do listen out for that little niggle, that niggle is telling you that there's something not right. And you know it.
Yes.
And and often we ignore it because we want to believe, of course we want to believe, that somebody loves us, somebody wants us, and somebody's going to, you know, look after us. But there's that niggle, if it's there and the red flags are coming. You know, my advice to my daughter is, you know, this isn't about being suspicious of everybody and paranoid, but it is about trusting your gut, because when it niggles and it gnaws away, there is something that needs to be attended to and
Absolutely.
probably acted on sooner rather than later.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%, because you know, you've got your head, your heart, and your gut, which kind of power you through life. Now, my head is crazy. I don't trust her at all. She's a nutter.
Yeah.
My heart, the same. She's
Yeah.
made loads of mistakes,
Yeah.
loads of mistakes.
Yeah.
Well, have got me to who I am now, but like, good grief, I wouldn't trust her. But my gut,
Yeah.
spot on every time. Absolutely. I'm just
Mm.
going to have a look at some of the comments. Somebody's just asking, and I'm sorry, whoever's asking about downloading my book on Audible. I'm sorry, my book's not available now. I can't see who you are because StreamYard won't let me see who you are. Mary, is your book on Audible?
No, it's not on Audible.
I
but
need to have a look at that, actually, because that's something I think probably will cost a fortune, but it's definitely something for in the future, and also having it translated into other languages as well. And Portia's saying, what talent, obviously, because she's listening to you talk about your poem, and she's saying, I think that the lockdown has helped with her own healing too. And she's crying. Yes, she's crying. We cry quite a lot, but that's a good thing. Crying's a good thing. It gets things out of your system, and it's honest, isn't it? Crying's honest. So, any key insights did you discover in your writing the book that you wanted to share with people?
Do you know, the one I've just discussed is, you know, trust your intuition.
Yeah.
So it's so important that we do that. The second one really is, you know, truth is freedom, and that covers a wide variety of things. Truth for your own situation. So for me, truth that I knew that I was sad, angry, and frightened still as a 60-year-old woman. To tell myself, to admit that to myself as a truth, allowed me to then go on and say, well, you know, how you deal with that? And actually it was writing that allowed me to deal with that. But if you're in a situation, you know, which is an unhappy situation, if you're in a situation where, you know, as partners, you're not adding value to one another's lives, but worse than that, you're actually destroying one another's lives, then, you know, the truth of that is very hard to admit, as you said earlier about shame. You know, the truth of this relationship isn't working, this person isn't right for me, this person is damaging me, damaging my well-being, my sense of self, my confidence, my self-esteem. To be able to just say that to yourself and to tell the truth is incredibly courageous. But unless you tell the truth, there is no freedom, because while you're always hiding and papering over and ignoring and thinking it's going to get better, you know, the reality is, if you're a man or a woman and you're living with somebody that is, you know, some sort of predator, they're unlikely to change. You know, they might modify their behavior from time to time, but, you know, it's very unlikely that the situation will actually improve. And even way into my 70s, you know, my dad was still being violent towards my mum in the way that he had, you know, when they were in their 30s, 40s, 50s and 60s. So, you know, once the behaviour is there. So
Because
truth is
I guess
freedom.
if you don't, from the direction that I'm coming from a point of prevention. And I
Yeah.
think the truth is really important, but the truth is also terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
making a step, to end that relationship is scary, very, very scary. Still, the scariest thing I've ever done was end my
Yeah.
marriage,
Yeah.
the one before this one, because I have several. My band of acceptability is very narrow, but that, we're not saying to people, it's easy. We're not saying that. What we're saying is the truth is necessary in order to live the life that you need to live, because
Yeah.
living with an abuser is no life.
No, no, no. But that truth is, I'm guessing for you, Ree, the moment that you do admit to yourself the truth of your situation, that's
Yeah.
when you can move on, not move on, but there's something about opening the door to choices.
Yeah.
You can choose to stay, that's a
Yes.
choice. You can choose to stay, but there's, once you've opened that door, because you've admitted it, then there is that choice of, I could maybe work out how I'm going to walk through that door, or at
Yeah.
least put my toe out the door,
I
that I
think
can do something.
I think the anticipation of it is far more terrifying than the actual doing of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And as long as people do it in a safe way,
yeah,
there's nothing to lose. There's everything to gain.
yeah, yeah. And if you think, the lots of women will say, well, we need to stay together as a family and stay together for children. But, I can tell you now, I didn't want to live in that house, and I
Yeah.
didn't want to be caught up in that marriage disaster in the
Yeah.
way that I was. And I was caught up in it for right the way through till they were in their 70s. Until they were both put in the ground, I wasn't ever free of them, in
Yeah.
terms of, that it was just relentless in many ways. And if you are staying in a house with children, the children deserve better. They do. And they would prefer to be in a hostel in peace and quiet than they would. And I know that's not everybody's first choice, but peace and quiet and peace of mind go a long, long way.
Yes.
In terms of, for you and your child, in terms of your well-being.
Yes. And I always say, you can choose to be, and it's hard, you choose to be in the relationship or to end it, but children don't have any
No,
choice.
no, no. And I felt one of the things that stayed with me a lot, really, and was this idea, being powerless, because children can't intervene against a grown man, that's going to be threatening their mum. I mean, it just can't happen.
Doesn't happen.
So you are that feeling of being powerless. There's a feeling of then being inadequate because you can't solve the situation. You try then to do what you can in terms of being better and being this and being that, because maybe that's a way that you could solve the situation and make things better. So you take on a lot of sort of trying very hard to see if you could make things better. Being there for your mum, I was the rescuer. I was always the rescuer. We had the perpetrator, the victim, and the rescuer, the same old triangle. It's a lot to burden your children with, really.
I
And
agree.
it's very, very unfair. And children grow up, we're learning now that children's brain development suffers, obviously their education suffers. They have PTSD, and maybe some of them decide that that's the way that you get things done in life, that
Yes.
so we don't teach them any good lessons. And
Yeah.
it's very sad for the children.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. I just don't. I couldn't. My ex-husband wasn't physically abusive, but I couldn't stay in an environment of the negativity. I couldn't let my children see that imbalance and their concern on their faces and me not do something about it.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah.
I just couldn't do that. Do you have a final poem of encouragement for us this evening?
Well, I do. The one that I wrote at the very back of the book, and then there's another very quick thing I'd like to share with you, if I may. So,
Please do.
This one was at the end of the book. I say, to all the women, children too, to any men who feel like you, for those who've met the predator, this is your life. You must seek more. Forgive yourself. Don't take the blame. It's not your fault, so don't feel shame. Your life depends on what you do in making choices, following through. Don't worry what the others think, that in their judgment you will sink. This makes you captive of your mind. This is the way to stay confined. So if you want to fly and soar, it's time to look behind the door. See what's there with clarity, as only truth will set you free. So that was really trying to focus on the truth is freedom. But I did have another little thing that I just wanted to share with you. Can I do that quickly?
Oh, please. Yes, definitely.
So this was really something I read just this last week. And, it was about letting go and looking forward. And actually, you need to deal with the anger, deal with all that stuff that you've got going on inside. But at some point, although you feel that you've been damaged and you feel a victim and you feel you've been hard done by, at some point, it's important to move forward with your life. So this says, nobody will protect you from your suffering. You can't cry it away or eat it away or starve it away or walk it away or punch it away or even therapy it away. It's just there and you have to survive it. You have to endure it. You have to live through it and love it and move on and be better for it and run as far as you can in the direction of your best and happiest dreams across the bridge that was built by your own desire to heal. And I think that desire to heal, if this book has taught me anything, is that healing is so important and allows you to free up the energy you need to, go on and create the life you want.
Absolutely. That was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And Portia says she loves you. She's that your book may be 50 pages, but every sentence could be made into a lesson. You could literally take that book and make each section into a lesson for people to talk and discuss and unpick emotions that are holding them back. Because you're right, you have to choose to move forward.
Yeah.
You literally cannot, that last poem that you've just read is absolutely spot on. Absolutely. I've got goosebumps. Thank you so much for coming on this evening, all the way from France. It's an absolute pleasure to talk to you, Mary. We could talk for hours, I know that. Tell us where we can find your book, please.
Yes, so if you go onto Amazon, The Song of Truth, you can get it to download for 99p. And you can buy it in hardback, but it is a tiny little book, so it's pretty easy to read online. You can also get it from Lulu. And also the poems are just being uploaded onto my website, which is marywride.com. And they're in a little booklet called Hidden Truths. So I expect in the next, probably certainly by the end of this month, you could go on there and download them for free. And really all I'm asking for is, if you do download them, if you feel able to make a donation to some sort of women or children's charity, then obviously that's up to you. But it would be great if you felt able to make a donation for that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Ellie.
Thank you.
Ellie is saying thank you so much for sharing, Mary. And again, absolutely wonderful talking to you. If anybody has any questions and they're watching this after the live, please put questions in, because we will get notifications and we will get back to you. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And have a lovely evening, and we'll speak again soon.
Thank you.
care, and good night, everybody. Thank you for joining us if you did, and thank you for joining us if you didn't. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.